Well, thank you for taking the time to join me today. So I'm going to have a 35 minutes presentation, and I have a lot of slides, so I'm going to speak very fast. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Ted Liu Tiandong. So if you speak English, please use that headset for interpreting. So I'm the co-founder of Open Source Director. Please wait a second. I'm dealing with technical problems. Can you please help me with the pointer? It doesn't move here. Please wait a second. I hope it works. Can you please check the projector? Please wait a second. Let me try again. Sorry for keeping you waiting. Sorry, my slides are not shown on the projector. Sorry for keeping you waiting. So I'm Ted Liu, and I'm the director of Kaiyuanshe, which is an open source club. I also work in Apache. So I'm a member of Apache, and in China there are 13 Apache ASF members, and I'm one of the 13 members in China. And I have been working in two areas. Most of the time, I'm working on open source in mainland China, and the other part of my job is to work as the ASF incubator. And moreover, for some projects, I work as the mentor. So these are my responsibilities. So currently, China So actually, from 2015, there were 3 programs in China, and now there are 14 projects of Apache in China. Some are from big companies or startups or from individuals. So they make use of Apache platform for incubation, and then they were officially released. Up till now, there have been 14 projects in China, and among that, 9 are official programs, and the other 5 are still in incubation. And for Apache, I am also one of the fundraiser committee members. We work with Microsoft and many other companies for sponsorship. In China, we have Huawei, Tencent, Baidu, Alibaba, and one other company who are sponsoring Apache. So I work with these sponsors in China too. So can I continue with my presentation? I'll wait a few seconds. Okay, thank you for waiting. So I'm going to talk about Kaiyuanshe, which is the open source society. And then I will give a brief introduction to it, and then I'll talk about open source and the open source governance practice. I'll talk about the procedures, which will be quite boring. So my PDF version can be downloaded, so I'm going to talk about it very fast. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the procedures. And also I'll talk about the selection of a license. So Kaiyuanshe was founded in October under CSDN and Give Cafe and some other committees. So it was supported by open source individuals, communities, and enterprises. And it's actually established under volunteers. So for this platform, we work under the principles of contribution, consensus, and governance. We call it a community of community. We hope that in China, we're going to promote a sustainable open source community. And we hope that in China, the open source community can contribute to the global community of open source. So currently, we work in 4 areas. So actually, the mission of our community includes 4 areas. Some people say that for our society, we do not have our technology, but the fact is that our technology is faced towards developers. So we have 4 missions. The first one is open source governance, which means to have horizontal management on this community. Second, we're going to have community development. We believe 1 + 1 is over 2, so we develop as a community. The third one is going international. We have done a lot of work in this area. For example, we work with many international foundations. And when we come to China, actually, many international foundations already know us, and they get to work with us. And the last part is open source projects. So these are our missions. Let me talk about it one by one. First one is open source governance. So as for our conference, usually in the past we had smaller conferences, and in recent years there are bigger and bigger conferences about open source. So actually this kind of governance includes the open source process guidance, open source license, and legal advisory, etc. So you can go to our website for more information. For example, we provide the automatic selection of open source online, and we also provide legal advisory service. We also launched the China Open Source Ecosystem Report in China. So for the open source initiative, Kaiyuanshe is the only member in this community. So in terms of community development, we have our annual conference. This year, we're going to have our annual conference on November 2nd and 3rd. It's called CoSCon. And also we have hackathon and online and offline programs, and also Linux activities. As for going international, we work with many top international foundations. So this is also the part that we are very good at. We assist communities and governments and companies to work with international foundations. And also we have our open source platform.
We help open source developers with their projects and also link them to the business's needs. We hope for the hardworking programmers, while contributing to open source, can also get recognized and accepted by and adopted and even incentivized by businesses. So the next is that hack platform, the hack marathon platform. We have organized dozens of hacking marathons starting 2018 with the participation of Microsoft. This platform was donated to Kaiyuanshe. So also we have the WeChat robots. So earlier today I was talking to some colleagues from Tencent and talking about what the WeChat robots can do. Because a lot of the communication is done on WeChat. Like in other countries, they usually use email for their work, but in China, they talk about work on WeChat and social media a lot. So now the WeChat robot can help every group to keep track of their conversations. The chat history can be sent to Gitter, which is on GitHub. So all the chat history is there, it's documented there. So there's a log of the daily log of the conversation or chat history sent to your mailbox. And also the new official website is migrated to the GitHub, and also we make this annual report of open source in China. And if you go to our exhibition booth, you can scan the QR code and fill out your profile. And I could see that people were working hard and treating the questionnaire seriously, so that if you go there and get signed up, and then we can send you the 2019 China Open Source Annual Report as well when we make it available. So here is the organizational structure. And we are volunteers. We are a not-for-profit organization. We have 7 directors and also 10 working groups, and 1 executive committee, 1 executive director, and also we have an advisory committee, which are good friends and experts from China and other parts of the world. And also we have the regulatory advisory committee, like Kevin Huang here and many other old friends who are often giving us advice. So these are the directors of this of 2019, and we are very special compared with other foundations in other countries, because you can see 3 of them are ladies that are good-looking ladies who are also very competent. I mean, we have so many women on our board. And you can see that this is the executive committee and the 10 working groups. So they have division of work. And some work on regulatory affairs and on media, on open source education, and so on. After 5 years, we gradually built up the competence because everybody has to work 996, and they spend their spare time at night or on weekends and make things happen little by little. This year's China Open Source Conference will take place in Shanghai. You can join us as a volunteer or as an audience member. Either way will be good. You can see how, by just using so few staff members or volunteers, we organize the China Open Source Conference every year. And this QR code is Kaiyuanshe's official account on WeChat. You are free to follow us. You are welcome to follow us. And next, I want to talk about the open and open source. As we know, open source is becoming more and more adopted by businesses because they can deploy faster and the development is better, maintenance is cheaper. They used to be specialized customized software, like lots of the customization and lots of these business software suites. And now, in the world of open source, they can download it and do a lot of integration rather than customization. Of course, there's still customization, but we can see that more and more Chinese companies are participating in open source, in using them, and more in developing open source. But meanwhile, it's becoming more complex because there are so many choices. You have so many licenses, source codes, and compatibility issues, updating, and so on. There are so many choices, especially in the world of cloud. We know about its openness, about open source, and between software, between licenses. There are always compatibility issues. So are they really open? There are so many options. Many users and businesses find it difficult. Today, I was talking to a government official. They do standardization. So in recent years, the government has been changing its role. It's changing its role from being by providing the instruction to helping the ecosystem to grow. They want to really know what the grassroots level people are thinking, what the businesses and developers are thinking. So just now I talked about openness and open source. So openness is a bigger topic. Open source it's not everything for openness, because openness is also about the standardization and the community. The standardization is very important. So in open source and non-open source, there are lots of standards. If everybody respects these standards, it will be easy for us to communicate. But there are projects and software that didn't follow these standards because they were so big, they thought they were the standard setter. They were the standards themselves. However, we still need interoperability and lots of communication between us. So if you think about the open source, is only part of the ecosystem. If you think about an open ecosystem, it will definitely include open source and community and standards and interoperability. So, up to now, I want to say that worldwide, more and more businesses are participating in open source by using it or by even participating in the development of it. So here is the statistics from the research done by Apache Foundation. What is the most successful governance model for open source governance? And according to their research, the big open source foundations can do projects that are that are bigger than one company's project, no matter it's open source or not open source, or by project by small organizations. So these big foundations have much bigger projects in terms of community size and user group size. And when businesses participate in open source development, they do their math on ROI. So usually they expect 5 times return investment because they have so many users and participants. So, like for one single company like MySQL, Qt, and OpenOffice, they are usually smaller projects with smaller communities and fewer developers and fewer daily submissions. And about these big foundations, like top 9 biggest foundations, usually the average number of developers is over 1,000 and the daily code submission is over 100. This is from the research by Apache. So, for not-for-profit foundations, how should they help the community grow? The most important way is that the businesses will understand that they should work closely with these big foundations rather than working in isolated ways, so that they will have bigger market potentials and bigger size. Because the more users participate, the more contributors contribute, the bigger the community will be, especially the foundation-guided communities. Then they will have more clients and more code contributions. This will lead to a positive cycle. Just now we learned about the introduction. So, because the open source is adopted by many businesses in other countries, and lately in China, if you think about the big companies like Baidu, Huawei, Alibaba, Tencent, and many others, JD and DD and 360, they have been participating in open source. So because there is the economic factor, the return investment, it helps the business. And next, I want to talk about this. When you use so much open source software, how do you govern the community? So actually, many people think it's just about licensing, but actually license is part of it. There's also risk management and also regulatory governance and also community governance about how to develop your community. Just now I talked about the interoperability and the community. They are all important. So how do you develop the community, and also how do you have good governance for one single project? I mean, open source governance is a very big framework. Okay, next, this is a quotation from the president of ASF. He says, open source governance is a social framework. Today, I may not have time to really talk about open source licensing. I mean, there's a lot to say. About open source licensing, it's a legal framework, and we know open source governance, it's a social framework, so licensing is only the legal part of the framework. Many companies understand the importance of open source. They want to use it, they want to adopt it, they want to contribute to it. So these companies need open source governance. They need a virtual team or a tangible or intangible team to govern the open source work. It's part of the extension of their operation. So if you look at the big companies like Google, Intel, Microsoft, and many others, and also many startups like Facebook, GitHub, Twitter, and so on, these companies, they have this to-do group. So this is the head of our open source education team. He's a very good writer. I read his writing every day, and he also has this book reading club. He started it, right? Has very high requirement to join in. So This is the help from some open source expert. They were helping us. About the open source office, many companies are having it already. So what do they actually do? What can they help? What can they help with? The open source office. Open source project office, like OSPO. So I want to show this slide, and excuse me. So the open source program office can do lots of things like strategy, process, policy, education, and popularization, community relations, and regulatory affairs, compliance, and also technical guidance. It can do lots of things, the OSPO, Open Source Program Office. So there are many details I will not go into today.
So as for the open source office, first we need to have a team leader. So for every company or for every project, you need to have a leader to implement the strategies. So we need to first choose the leader, and after that we need to define what we're going to do and collect feedback from different departments and also gain support from different functions. And also it needs to decide whether it's going to be a cross-function or whether it belongs to a specific department. For example, for Microsoft, it is under the engineering department. It was called Microsoft Open Technology. And I was also a part of it. And some actually put it in under marketing and developer relationship. For Netflix, it has a cross-function team because it's a B2C company. So as for the staff members, there are also different types of staff members. For example, there needs to be a project manager, and also we need to have a legal staff, and also the OSRB, which actually is a committee with people from different departments. Moreover, there are also governance tools and training staff who are responsible for that. And also there are people who are responsible for developing tools and systems and integration. So it can be big or small, and it's very flexible. So I'm going to talk about a few cases. So one is about Twitter. So for Twitter, it was an open source from day one. It started with 4,000 employees. And currently, there are over 300 million active users. And every day, there are about 500 million tweets. 80% are from mobile users. So as for open source office, it can do something different. It has a more broader view. So it has open standards, and it's also part of open data. It makes use of open data, open source, open standards, and community management and outreach. So for open source office, it aims at highest speed and more strictness. So it aims at less bureaucracy. Second, it aims at a more pleasant open source procedure. And that means to have a more pleasant environment. Number 3 is to have higher efficiency to protect the company. And number 4 is to establish a community for its key projects. Without a community, it's hard for a project to succeed. So actually people say that a project is successful if they launch it without the contribution from others. But the fact is that it's hard for the community to grow if you have this kind of mechanism. So one of the foundations said that for an average project which is not excellent, if you have a community to support it, it will get more excellent. If you believe that your project is good enough and you don't need more contribution from the outside, then this project is probably not going to grow. So as for open source project in China and in other countries, there are many differences. So for many projects, they protect themselves and they do not grow and they do not attract contributors from the outside. Well, actually, education and culture are really important. So I have 5 minutes. And what does Twitter learn? Well, actually, it has a bootstrap. Sorry, I had some technical problems, so I had to speed up. So Twitter learned a lot from its projects. For example, Apache License 2.0 and MIP. So at the beginning, you need to choose a permissive license, not copyleft. And it has learned a lot in time management and in community management. It has learned a lot from methods too. So they work with the academics and universities very closely. So for different projects, they have different learnings. They also work with the open source foundation. For example, for methods, they work in big data and they gained a lot of best practice. And also they learned from Dreamcatch. And also the upstream has been given privilege in this project. So due to limitation of time, I'm not going to talk about everything. So after the open source, it has contributions from different sources and from different countries. And this has actually enhanced the dynamics of the project. So what they have learned is that contribution will bring more influence, and the community is born with the contribution of outsiders. So what I want to emphasize is that every company should ask itself many questions when it is involved in open source. So I have the PDF version online for you to download. So as for open source, it has 8 elements. So as for the 8 elements listed here, they are very important, but I didn't have time to talk about it one by one. So as for compliance, well, at the beginning, the company needs to know that for open source, what are the advantages of it? Are there going to be advantages in technology? And as for the open source projects, so when it is part of our product, what kind of value can we find from it? What is the cost and the risks? And and whether there were trust from the community. And then, as for M&A or business negotiations or sales or product launch, whether the open source is going to make contribution and what needs to be prepared for it. And also, as for the supply chain, especially for OEM, we need to have the open source supply chain to bring more reliability. I don't think I have time to cover the rest of my presentation. So there are a lot of things that I wanted to mention, but due to limitation of time, I'm not going to talk about it. So the next issue I wanted to talk about is the procedures for selection of a license. For example, for the project report and the software programs. So as for the procedures, we need to answer the questions before we start the procedures. And after that, then we would have the fund for it. And then, as for the software tools and third-party manufacturers, then we give our investment. We also need to know more about the resource and the database. Sorry, I didn't have time for that. As for the configuration and the preparation, I'm also going to skip it. And there are some resources that you can go to, and in my PDF version, you can get more information from it. And this is about getting the code in different resources. So this is about the running policy. So this is about the compliance check procedure. This is about request and approval procedures. This is about auditing and reporting. And this is about the open source governance tools. And you can actually find it online. I was talking to Linux Foundation, and there are some tools like SPDS, which we can use. So this is about open source management methods. So with this kind of tools, then there are help that you can get from it, but this is not potent. There are some details that can be quite challenging for you. So, at the selection of tools, you need to talk to experts or consultants before you use it. So this is about how Google did its open source. And you can refer to my PDF version. Sorry, I don't have time for talking about the procedures. There's a lot I want to cover, but due to limitation of time, I don't have time for the rest of it. Thank you for listening.